The war had already lasted 3 years, and no one in the galaxy believed humans would survive it. They were new to space, new to interstellar politics, and painfully young compared to the ancient alien empires that ruled most known systems. When the fighting began, many observers assumed humanity would be crushed quickly and quietly. Instead, humans adapted. They learned fast. They lost worlds, but they never surrendered. Now the fighting had reached a breaking point. The planet of Valka Prime hung in space like a dark jewel, its surface covered in black oceans and towering crystal cities. It was the heart of the Valkar Dominion, ruled by a single queen whose word meant law, life, and death. When human forces captured the outer defense ring of the system, the galaxy held its breath. No one had ever pushed this far and lived. Inside a temporary command structure on the edge of the planet's atmosphere, human officers argued in low, tense voices. Screens showed enemy fleet movements, casualty reports, and projections that all ended the same way. Total war, extinction-level losses, no winners. Then the message arrived. It did not come through open channels or diplomatic relays. It bypassed them all and appeared directly on the command screen, encoded in flawless human language. I am Queen Shareth of the Valkar Dominion. I demand audience with one human soldier, not a leader, not a diplomat, one who has fought. The room went silent. Admiral Hargreaves stared at the screen, jaw tight. This has to be a trap. Everything out here is a trap, another officer replied. But she didn't ask for surrender, she didn't ask for terms. She asked for a soldier, the admiral said slowly. Why? No one had an answer. Hours later, deep within the barracks of the human expeditionary force, a man named Elias Carter sat alone, cleaning his rifle with practiced hands. He was not famous. He was not high-ranking. He had survived battles on 3 different worlds and carried scars he never talked about. To him, war was simple. You protected the person next to you. You followed orders. You kept going. When the guards arrived, Elias thought he was being reassigned. Instead, he was escorted to the command chamber. The admiral studied him for a long moment. Do you know why you're here, soldier? Elias shook his head. No, sir. You were chosen by the Queen of the Valkar, the admiral said. She requested you by name. Elias blinked. With respect, sir, I've never met her. That's what worries me. The truth came out slowly, each word heavier than the last. The Queen demanded peace, an immediate ceasefire, withdrawal of her fleets, recognition of humanity as a sovereign power. The price was Elias Carter. She wants to marry you, the admiral said quietly. The room felt smaller. Elias didn't laugh. He didn't speak. He just stood there, processing something so unreal it felt like a bad dream. If we refuse, the admiral continued, she launches everything she has. Billions will die, human worlds will burn if we accept. I stop being human, Elias said. You become something else, the admiral replied. A symbol, a risk, or a bridge. Elias thought of the soldiers he had buried, the civilians he had escorted to safety. The letters he never finished writing home. When? He asked. Now. The transport that carried him to Valka Prime was silent except for the hum of alien engines. Through the viewport, Elias watched the planet grow larger, darker, more alien with every passing second. He felt small, not weak, but aware. Aware that he was walking into the heart of something ancient and powerful. The landing platform was enormous, carved from black crystal and living metal. Alien guards waited in perfect formation, their armor reflecting strange light. They were taller than him, broader, their eyes glowing with controlled menace. None of them spoke. Elias was escorted through halls that stretched endlessly upward, filled with symbols he could not read but somehow understood were warnings. This was a place of dominance, tradition, and control. At last, the doors opened. The throne room was vast, circular, and silent. At its center stood the queen. She was taller than any human woman, her form both elegant and terrifying. Her skin shimmered like polished obsidian, her eyes a deep silver that seemed to see through him. A crown of living crystal rested upon her head, pulsing softly as if alive. She did not rise when he entered. "So," she said, her voice calm and powerful, "this is the human." Elias stopped at the marked line on the floor. He stood straight, hands at his sides. "My name is Elias Carter," he said. "I am a soldier of Earth." The Queen studied him without expression. "You are smaller than I expected." "I get that a lot," Elias replied. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some of the alien nobles looked offended, others looked amused. "You do not kneel," the Queen observed. "No," Elias said simply. "I was not ordered to." Something changed in her gaze, not anger, interest. "You know why you are here," she said. "Yes." "And you do not beg." "No." "Do you fear me?" Elias thought for a moment. "I respect you." The silence that followed was heavy. "You are aware," the Queen said, "that accepting my demand will bind you to my throne. You will never return to your people as you were. You will belong to this empire." Elias met her eyes. "I belong to my people already." Her lips curved slightly. "Then we are alike." She stood, and the entire chamber bowed. Only Elias remained standing. "You were chosen because you fight without hatred," the Queen said as she descended the steps. "You protect even when there is no reward. You do not seek power." She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could feel the heat of her presence. "My empire is strong," she continued, "but it is fragile. My enemies watch for weakness. A human at my side will anger them. That is why I want you." "To provoke them?" Elias asked. "To reveal them," she corrected, "and to remind my people what strength truly is." Elias swallowed. "And if I refuse?" The Queen did not hesitate. "War," he nodded once. "Then I need time." "You have one night," she said. "After that the galaxy will change." As he was escorted away, whispers followed him through the halls. Some called him prey. Others called him weapon. None understood him. Alone in the chamber prepared for him, Elias sat on the edge of a bed far too large and stared at his hands. They were scarred, shaking slightly. He was just a soldier. Yet somewhere beyond those walls, entire worlds waited on his choice. And for the first time since the war began, the fate of the galaxy rested not on fleets or weapons, but on one human heart. Morning on Valka Prime did not come with sunlight. Instead, the sky shifted from deep black to a dark violet glow, as if the planet itself was waking slowly. Elias Carter stood near the tall window of his chamber, watching alien ships move in silent lines above the city. They looked calm, controlled, nothing like the chaos of human war zones. Yet he could feel tension everywhere, like a blade held just above skin. He had barely slept. The Queen's words repeated in his mind again and again. One night to decide. One choice to end or continue a war that had already taken too much. A soft sound came from behind him. The door opened without a guard's announcement. Elias turned slightly, ready for anything. Instead of soldiers, two alien attendants entered. They were smaller than the guards, their movements precise and respectful. One carried folded fabric that shimmered faintly. The other held a flat crystal tablet. "The Queen commands your presence at the court council," one attendant said in clear human language. "You are to prepare." Elias looked at the fabric. "What is that?" "Court attire," the attendant replied. "You may refuse it, but wearing it signals respect." Elias thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll wear it." The fabric was light and flexible, unlike armor, but it carried weight in another way. Symbols were woven into it, marks of the Valkar royal house. When Elias finished dressing, he barely recognized himself. He still looked human, but now he looked important. That thought made him uncomfortable. As he followed the attendants through the palace halls, he noticed how many eyes were on him. Nobles stopped their conversations when he passed. Warriors watched him with open judgment. Some looked curious, others looked angry. He heard whispers, not all translated, soft-skinned. At the highest point was the Queen's throne, empty for the moment. The room buzzed with controlled tension. When Elias stepped inside, the noise died instantly. Every gaze turned toward him. He felt exposed, like standing unarmed on a battlefield, but he did not lower his eyes. He walked to the center platform and stopped. Moments later, the queen entered. Everyone bowed. Again, Elias did not. The queen took her throne and looked down at the gathered council. "You may speak," she said. The reaction was immediate. "This is madness," one noble said sharply. "Binding the throne to a human invites chaos." "They are unpredictable," another added. "Their species is violent and young." "A symbol of weakness," a third voice said. "Our enemies will test us." The queen listened without interrupting. Then she raised one hand and silence returned. "You speak of weakness," she said calmly. "Yet it took 3 years to push them back. You speak of unpredictability, yet they stand when logic says they should fall." Her eyes shifted to Elias. This one was chosen for a reason. A tall alien commander stepped forward. His armor was marked with countless battle honors. "With respect, my queen," he said, "he is unproven in our ways. He knows nothing of our traditions, our power, or our enemies." "Then test me," Elias said. The words came out before he could stop them. A ripple moved through the chamber. The commander stared at him. "You dare speak?" Elias met his gaze. "You said I'm unproven, so prove it." Silence followed. The queen's lips curved slightly. "A challenge then," she said. "Very well." The commander smiled, sharp and cold. "I accept." The challenge was not a duel. It was worse. Elias was taken to a training arena deep beneath the palace. The space was massive, filled with shifting platforms, gravity fields, and obstacles designed to break bodies and minds. This was where Valkar warriors were tested. The commander watched from above with other nobles. "You may use no weapons," the overseer announced. "Only your body and your will." Elias rolled his shoulders once and stepped forward. The test began without warning. Gravity shifted violently, pulling him sideways. Elias stumbled but stayed upright. Platforms moved, rose, and vanished. Energy barriers flared close enough to burn. Mechanical constructs emerged fast and heavy. Elias did not try to overpower them. He adapted. He learned the timing of the gravity shifts, used momentum instead of fighting it. He climbed, slid, jumped. When constructs attacked, he redirected their force using angles and leverage. He fell more than once. He bled. His breathing grew heavy, but he did not stop. Minutes stretched into hours. The watchers grew quiet. This was not how Valkar warriors fought. They relied on strength and dominance. Elias relied on endurance and thought. When exhaustion threatened to take him, he remembered why he was here. Not for pride, not for glory, for peace. At last, the final platform locked into place. Elias stood alone, shaking, blood on his sleeve, chest rising and falling hard. The test ended. No cheers followed, no applause, only silence. The commander said nothing as Elias was escorted out. His expression was no longer confident. Later that cycle, Elias was brought back before the queen, this time alone. No council, no nobles. "You impressed them," the queen said. "I didn't try to," Elias replied honestly. "I just didn't quit." She studied him for a long moment. "That is why you are dangerous." She rose and walked beside him, not ahead, not behind. "My people believe strength is dominance," she continued. "You showed them another kind." They stopped near a wide balcony overlooking the city. "You have seen their reaction," she said. "If you accept, they will resist you. They will look for failure." "I know," Elias said. "You will be alone," she added. He thought of Earth, of the people who would never know his name if this worked, of the soldiers still fighting. "I've been alone before," he said quietly. The queen turned to face him fully. "You still have the choice to leave." "And the war?" She did not answer. She did not need to. Elias looked out at the alien city, at a civilization that was not his, yet now tied to him. "I haven't decided," he said. "But if I stay, I won't be your prisoner. I won't be a symbol you hide behind." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what will you be?" He met her gaze. honest. Something shifted between them, not trust, not yet, but recognition. "Very well," the queen said. "Then learn, watch, understand this empire. You have until the next council cycle." As Elias returned to his chamber, exhaustion finally caught up to him. His body ached, but his mind raced. He was not welcomed. He was not wanted, but he was still standing. And somewhere deep within the palace, enemies were already planning their next move. Because if a human could survive the trials of Valka Prime, it grew sharper, quieter, and more dangerous. Elias Carter felt it everywhere he went. When he walked through the halls, conversation stopped. When he trained with the palace guards, they watched him like a strange animal, something to study, not trust. Some obeyed him out of duty to the queen. Others clearly waited for him to fail. Days passed on Valka Prime, marked not by sunlight but by changes in the sky's color and the low hum of the city. Elias spent his time learning. He learned Valkar customs, their strict codes of honor, their belief that strength meant control over others. He listened more than he spoke. When nobles insulted him, he did not respond. When warriors tested him, he endured. This confused them. To the Valkar, power demanded reaction. Anger, pride, punishment. Elias gave none of that. The queen noticed. From her throne, Shareth watched him carefully. She had ruled for many cycles, long enough to recognize threats. Most came loudly, with ambition and force. Elias was different. He did not seek influence, yet it gathered around him anyway. Some of the younger guards began to copy his training habits. Human-style drills, focus on teamwork instead of dominance, quiet discipline instead of ritual shouting. That worried the old nobles. One cycle before the next council, the queen summoned Elias late into the dark phase. He arrived armed only with a small personal communicator, his posture calm but alert. "You sense it," she said as soon as they were alone. "Yes," Elias replied. "Someone's planning something." "Not someone," the queen corrected. "Many." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "They believe killing you will free the throne from this path. They believe I will have no choice but to continue the war." Elias absorbed that without surprise. "Then they don't know you very well." Her eyes sharpened. "No, they do not." She studied him for a long moment. "If an attempt is made on my life, you must not interfere." Elias frowned. "That's not something I can promise." "This is not a request," she said. "Then it's something you shouldn't ask," Elias replied quietly. The silence that followed was dangerous. "You forget your place," the queen said. "No," Elias answered. "I remember it." Something unreadable passed across her expression. "Go," she said at last. "Be ready." The ceremonial gathering began during the next sky shift. It was meant to honor ancient Valkar victories, a public display of unity and strength. Nobles filled the grand hall. Warriors lined the walls. The queen sat on her throne, flawless and calm. Elias stood below, positioned as tradition demanded. Visible, exposed. He knew this was where it would happen. He felt it before he saw it. A ripple in the air. A change in movement. 3 figures among the crowd shifted at once. Too coordinated, too precise. Energy weapons activated silently. Elias moved. He did not shout. He did not think. He reacted. The first shot fired toward the throne. Elias stepped into its path, the energy tearing through his shoulder instead of the queen's chest. Pain exploded, white and hot, but he stayed upright. Gasps echoed through the hall. The second attacker lunged forward. Elias closed the distance, using his injured arm to knock the weapon aside while driving his weight into the attacker's center. They fell together. Elias rolled, came up on one knee, and slammed his elbow down hard. The third attacker hesitated. That was the mistake. Palace guards finally reacted, weapons raised. The last attacker tried to flee, but Elias tackled him from behind, ignoring the pain screaming through his body. He held the attacker down until guards tore them away. The entire hall stood frozen. Elias pushed himself to his feet, blood soaking the strange Valkar fabric he wore. He swayed but did not fall. The queen had risen from her throne. She walked down the steps slowly, every eye following her. She stopped in front of Elias. "Why?" she asked quietly. He struggled to focus. "You were in the way. That was not your order," she said. "No," Elias admitted. "It was." The guards dragged the attackers away. The nobles whispered in shock and fear. This was not how things were meant to happen. The queen raised her voice. "This gathering is ended," she said. "Return to your quarters." No one argued. Elias barely remembered the walk to the medical chamber. Alien healers worked quickly, sealing the wound, stabilizing his body. He faded in and out, catching fragments of conversation. "Human biology is resilient." "You disobeyed me," she said. "Yes," Elias replied, his voice rough. "I would do it again." She did not respond immediately. Her gaze was fixed on his injured shoulder, now wrapped in glowing bandages. "You had the chance to step aside," she said, "to let fate decide." Elias met her eyes. "I don't believe in fate, I believe in choices." The queen leaned back slightly, studying him in silence. "They will call this weakness," she said. "They will say I allowed a human to interfere with sacred law." "Then let them," Elias said. "They already hate me." A pause. "And if this strengthens their resolve against you," she asked. Elias thought of the pain, the fear, the moment he chose to move. "Then at least they'll know why," he said. Something shifted in the queen then, not doubt, not fear, respect. "You were offered freedom," she said slowly. "After the trial, you could have left and let the war burn. I know. Why did you stay?" Elias looked at the ceiling, then back at her. "Because I've seen what endless war does. And because if I walk away now, everything you're risking means nothing." The queen stood. "You have bound yourself deeper than any oath," she said. Days later, the truth spread through the empire. A human had shielded the queen with his own body. A human had chosen loyalty without command. The story changed as it traveled, growing stronger with every retelling. Some nobles grew angrier. Others grew afraid. A few began to question everything they believed about strength. At the next council, the queen spoke openly. "The human is not my weakness," she said. "He is my proof." Opposition rose immediately, but it was different now, less certain, less loud. Elias stood at her side, still healing, still human. After the council, the queen offered him a final choice. "You may leave now," she said. "With honor, with protection. The war will resume, but your life will be spared." Elias looked at the city beyond the palace, at the world he did not belong to, yet had bled for. "No," he said. "If I leave now, everything I did was just survival. I didn't come this far for that." She nodded once. "Then understand this," the queen said. "From this moment forward, you are no longer just a guest. You are a target." Elias allowed himself a tired smile. "I figured." As shadows moved within the empire and distant fleets watched Valka prime closely, one truth became clear. The human soldier had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. And the galaxy would soon learn the cost of underestimating a choice made without fear. The Empire did not sleep after the assassination attempt. Valka Prime remained calm on the surface, but beneath that calm, plans shifted and loyalties cracked. Messages traveled through hidden channels. Fleets repositioned at the edges of controlled space. Ancient rivals of the Valkar Dominion watched closely, waiting for proof that the queen had finally weakened herself. Elias Carter felt the change before anyone told him. The guards outside his chamber doubled. Patrol routes changed daily. Some faces that once looked at him with open dislike now showed something else, uncertainty. Respect, maybe, or fear. His shoulder healed quickly by alien standards, but the pain lingered. He trained anyway. Each cycle he trained with the palace guard in the lower arenas. He never tried to command them. He trained beside them. He fell, got back up, corrected his mistakes openly. Slowly, a few guards began to mirror him. Not all, but enough. That worried the old commanders. During one training session, a senior warrior named Corval stepped forward. He was massive, his armor scarred from decades of battle. "You weaken discipline," Corval said loudly so all could hear. "You teach them to question." Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "I teach them to think. Thinking slows reaction," Corval replied. "Strength is obedience." Elias shook his head. "Strength is knowing when not to obey." A murmur spread through the arena. Corval's eyes hardened. "Careful, human." "I am," Elias said calmly. "That's why I'm still alive." The queen observed these interactions from afar. She did not intervene. This was part of the test, not of Elias but of her empire. At the next High Council, tensions finally broke open. Reports arrived that 3 neighboring powers had begun joint military exercises near Valkar borders. Officially, they claimed it was routine. No one believed that. "They smell weakness," one noble snapped. "This human has painted a target on us." "They would have attacked regardless," another countered. "They always wait for moments like this." The queen raised her hand. "Enough," she turned to Elias. "Tell them what you see." The council stiffened. A human speaking in council was unheard of. Elias stepped forward slowly. "They're testing you," he said. "Not because of me, because they think you're divided." A noble laughed bitterly. "And you will fix this division." "No," Elias replied. "You will, but not by pretending it doesn't exist." Silence followed. "They expect fear," Elias continued. "Or overreaction. If you give them either, they win." "And what would a human suggest?" Corval asked mockingly. Elias met his gaze. "Unity, real unity, not forced, chosen." Some scoffed, others listened. The queen leaned forward slightly. "Explain." Elias took a breath. "You announce the marriage publicly, not as a demand, as a choice. You show them this alliance doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you." Anger exploded across the chamber. "You would humiliate the throne." The queen let the storm rage until it burned itself out. Then she stood. "The marriage will proceed," she said, "publicly." The chamber froze. "And it will proceed because I choose it," she continued. "Not because of fear, not because of pressure. Because I believe this path leads to survival." Her gaze swept the room. "Those who cannot accept that are free to challenge me by law." No one moved. The announcement spread across the empire within hours, across the galaxy within days. Reactions were immediate. Some alien cultures mocked the Valkar openly, others expressed shock. A few sent quiet messages of curiosity. Humanity's leadership was stunned. Panic mixed with relief. On Earth, protests broke out. Supporters called Elias a hero. Critics called him a hostage. Elias saw none of it. He stood beside the queen as preparations began. The ceremony would not be simple. Valkar tradition demanded trials, not for celebration but for proof. The queen's chosen mate had to survive symbolic tests meant to represent leadership, sacrifice, and restraint. Many hoped Elias would fail. The first trial was endurance. Elias was sealed inside a chamber designed to overwhelm the senses. Shifting gravity, blinding light, crushing silence. No enemy to fight, no task to complete, just survival. He lasted longer than most Valkar nobles expected, not because he was stronger, but because he learned to be still. He breathed. He waited. When the chamber finally opened, he walked out on his own feet. The second trial was judgment. He was presented with simulated scenarios based on real Valkar conflicts. Each choice affected thousands. There were no perfect answers. Elias chose restraint when dominance was expected, mercy when punishment was tradition. Sometimes the observers disapproved. Sometimes they were shaken. The third trial was the hardest: control. He was given authority over a small guard unit and conflicting orders from different commanders. Tradition demanded he assert dominance and punish disobedience. Elias did not. He listened. He questioned. He unified the unit under a single purpose. When the test ended, the unit stood together, not fearful but loyal. That frightened the nobles more than any failure could have. As the ceremony drew closer, the threats became clearer. Long-range sensors detected hostile fleets moving out of formation, not attacking yet. Watching, they will strike during the ceremony, Corval said grimly, to prove your choice wrong. The queen looked at Elias. They will expect me to hide. Elias shook his head. Then don't. The plan that followed was simple and dangerous. The ceremony would proceed as announced. The fleets would be allowed to approach openly. No ambush, no retreat. Human forces were notified quietly. They moved into position not as invaders, but as allies. On the day of the ceremony, the sky over Valka Prime burned with color as foreign fleets entered orbit. Citizens gathered in silence. Warriors lined the ceremonial platform. Elias stood beside the queen, unarmed. The galaxy watched. A transmission broke through. An enemy leader appeared on massive hollow screens. "You disgrace your throne," the leader sneered. "Bind yourself to a lesser species and expect peace." The queen stepped forward. "I bind myself to strength," she said. "You mistake its form." The enemy laughed. "Then let us test it." The first shots did not come from the ground. They came from orbit. Human and Valkar fleets moved together instantly. Not perfectly, not without losses, but together. Elias felt the ground tremble beneath his feet as distant explosions lit the sky. The queen did not flinch. She turned to him. "This is the moment," she said. "If you wish to leave, no one will stop you." Elias looked at the burning sky, at the warriors holding the line, at the people watching, afraid but unbroken. "I'm not leaving," he said. The queen raised her voice so all could hear. "Then witness," she declared, "the strength of choice." As human and alien ships fought side by side above Valka Prime, something changed across the galaxy. The enemies had expected fear. They found resolve. And for the first time, the idea spread that humanity was not a desperate newcomer, but a force that stood where it chose to stand, even when the sky itself was on fire. The battle was not over. But the message was sent. The sky over Valka Prime burned with the fires of distant fleets, but the platform where Elias Carter and Queen Shareth stood remained eerily calm. The citizens of the Empire watched from afar, their eyes wide, unsure whether to cheer, tremble, or flee. The nobles and warriors surrounding the queen were tense, their hands hovering near weapons. Every heartbeat in the Empire seemed to slow. Elias looked at the queen. Her eyes, silver and unyielding, met his. No words were needed. They both understood what was at stake. A wrong move here could ignite war across multiple star systems, but courage and unity could rewrite history. He inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of every choice he had made and every life that depended on him. For the first time, he did not feel fear. He felt responsibility, and with it, clarity. The enemy leader, visible on massive hollow screens, sneered and barked orders to attack. But the fleet formations faltered under the combined human and Valkar coordination. Humans had taught Valkar engineers simple but effective strategies, and the Valkar soldiers had adapted quickly, following Elias' calm example of observation, timing, and precision. Explosions lit up the skies, painting the city below with flashes of red, orange, and silver. Alien fleets moved aggressively, but the humans and Valkar worked together seamlessly. For every ship destroyed, another advanced, covering each other, protecting civilians and keeping the ceremonial platform in clear view. From the balcony where the queen and Elias stood, it looked almost peaceful, a controlled storm of movement, courage, and determination. The enemy underestimated both species. They assumed the queen's human companion would freeze or falter or be irrelevant. Instead, he had become a living symbol of unity, of purpose beyond mere obedience. Corval, who had been skeptical of Elias from the start, now watched with astonishment. The soldier had endured trials, alien training, cultural disdain, and threats of death, yet he moved forward quietly without arrogance. His presence inspired loyalty, courage, and trust, things no amount of strength or weaponry could force. Inside the council chamber, the remaining nobles whispered among themselves. Many had expected the queen to crumble under pressure, but she did not. She had chosen a human beside her, and through his calm, careful leadership, the empire found new strength. Elias watched the enemy's tactical maneuvers. He did not command the fleets directly. Humans and Valkar had their leaders. Instead, he observed, advised, and made decisions only when necessary. His choices were small but impactful, redirecting a formation, reinforcing a weak sector, signaling a vulnerable area. Each action saved lives, shifted momentum, and demonstrated to everyone watching that leadership was more than power. It was vision, loyalty, and courage. Hours passed in tense calculation. Slowly, the enemy fleet began to retreat. Their attacks faltered. Their confidence cracked. They had expected chaos, fear, and disarray. What they found instead was something new: human resilience combined with Valkar discipline, guided by one soldier who refused to yield. Finally, the enemy commander appeared again on the hollow screens. This time, his expression was different, anger mixed with disbelief. "You are not supposed to survive," he said. "You are not supposed to lead." The Queen's voice rang clear across the empire and through the broadcast networks. "We survive because we choose to. We lead because we will protect what we value. You are too late." The remaining enemy ships withdrew, leaving the skies of Valka Prime scarred but intact. Citizens poured into the streets, their voices rising in awe and relief. Nobles and warriors cheered, realizing that the human soldier beside the queen had not only saved the ceremony, but had also preserved the empire and the fragile peace of the galaxy. Elias looked at the queen. She finally smiled, not in amusement but in acknowledgement of the truth. She had tested him, observed him, and now, in the aftermath of battle, she recognized what humanity had always shown. Strength was not just in the body, but in the mind, the heart, and the choices one made. "Are you hurt?" she asked, noticing the remnants of his wound. "Nothing I can't handle," Elias said with a tired grin. "A few scars never stopped anyone." Her gaze softened slightly. "You have done more than survive. You have changed the perception of humans across my empire and beyond." "I just did what had to be done," he replied. She shook her head, walking to stand closer. "No, you did what only a human could do. You chose loyalty, courage, and action where others would have hesitated. You are no symbol of weakness. You are proof of strength." The words echoed in Elia's mind. Proof of strength. Not for dominance, not for conquest, but for unity, for hope. The weight of responsibility was still there, but now it felt lighter. In the following weeks, the marriage ceremony proceeded as planned, openly and publicly. The Queen's choice was no longer seen as a gamble, but as a calculated act of courage and wisdom. Humans and Valkar worked side by side during preparations, and for the first time, alien citizens saw humans not as inferior newcomers, but as allies, partners, and equals. Elias participated fully, not as a servant, not as a pawn, but as an active participant. He learned the Valkar traditions, respected them, and even contributed his own ideas. His presence transformed the ceremony from a show of obligation into a celebration of unity. When the final day arrived, Elias stood beside the queen, both of them dressed in ceremonial attire that symbolized not dominance, but partnership. The ceremony was broadcast across the empire and to allied human colonies. For the first time in recorded history, two species were joined not by fear, not by conquest, but by choice, mutual respect, and shared courage. When the vows were exchanged, the queen placed her hand on his, and Elias felt the weight of centuries of tradition and expectation shift. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a partner, a bridge, and a living example that strength came in many forms. The celebrations that followed were tempered by vigilance. Some nobles still whispered doubts. Some enemy factions still plotted. But the galaxy had already taken note. The human soldier had stood, had acted, and had survived where countless others would have failed. Weeks later, Elias walked through the city with the queen at his side. Civilians approached him, not to bow or beg, but to speak, to ask advice, to see for themselves the man who had changed history. Children pointed, wide-eyed, and elders nodded in quiet approval. Corval approached him cautiously. "I doubted you," the warrior admitted. "I thought you would fail. I was wrong." Elias smiled faintly. "We all fight in ways we don't expect. You adapted, so did I. That's what mattered." Corval studied him, then nodded with genuine respect. "Then I will follow you, human. Not because I must, but because I choose to." And that choice rippled outward. Across the empire, soldiers and citizens began to emulate Elias' quiet courage and thoughtful strength. They realized that fear and dominance were not the only paths to victory. They saw that loyalty, bravery, and intelligence could accomplish far more. Months passed, and the galaxy slowly recognized the significance of what had occurred on Valka Prime. Humanity was no longer seen as fragile newcomers. Humans were clever, resilient, and capable of choices that could shift the balance of power. And Elias Carter, the ordinary soldier, had become a legend. He never sought the title. He did not crave admiration. He simply stood, acted, and chose. And that had been enough to save a civilization, forge an alliance, and teach the galaxy that true strength comes not from fear, weapons, or tradition, but from the courage to act wisely, boldly, and with heart. The Queen turned to him one evening as they watched the twin moons rise over Valka Prime. "You could have left," she said quietly. "I could have," Elias admitted. "But leaving wouldn't have changed anything. Staying, maybe it did." She nodded, her hand brushing against his. "It did, and in doing so you have shown what it means to be human." Elias looked out at the horizon. The city glimmered, the skies were calm, and the galaxy felt a little different. Not because war had ended entirely, but because the future now held possibilities no one had dared imagine before. And in that moment, standing beside an alien queen as equal, Elias Carter understood something that no battle, no trial, and no enemy could ever teach. That one human with courage, loyalty, and choice could indeed change the course of a galaxy. The war had not just been survived, it had been transformed. And humanity, once underestimated, would never again be ignored. The galaxy was listening, and it would never forget.